the rain was the only sound left. A grey wall of water had besieged the small hillside village in Kerala for 14 days and nights. Priya listened. She listened to the violent drumming of the rain on the tin roof, the quiet trickle of water from the aging banana leaves, and the distant, furious roar of the swollen Pamba River. But she did not hear footsteps. For 14 days, the silence at the threshold had become a throbbing pain. The world reeked of damp earth, of rising mildew, and of jasmine blossoms, once white, now rotting, dissolving in the standing water on the veranda. Priya pulled the thin shawl tighter around her shoulders, but the damp cold still snaked its way in, seeping into her very marrow. In the corner, her daughter Anu slept soundly in her cradle, her steady, warm breath, the only anchor in a world that was sinking. Priya squeezed her eyes shut. She prayed, not to any specific god, but to the silence itself, begging for a different sound, some sign that was not the rain. And then, she heard it. A jingle. Faint, but unmistakable. A small metallic sound, lost in the thick curtain of rain. Her heart stopped. It was the sound of the silver gungru bell, the one she had tied to Rohan's wrist for safety before he led that group of tourists deep into the forest. The jingle came again. Closer this time. But something was wrong. The sound was too slow, too rhythmic. It wasn't the sound of a footstep, but of someone dragging something heavy. She lunged for the door, her trembling hand fumbling with the wooden latch. She tore it open. The rain lashed her face, stinking cold. And he was standing there? Rohan. Or rather, the shadow of Rohan. He stood silently under the eaves, rain streaming down his gaunt, hollow face. His white kurta was torn to ribbons, plastered to his skin like a second layer. Mud, a thick, black, viscous mud, was caked from his feet to his neck. But it was his eyes that made Priya freeze. They were vacant, wide, soulless, staring right through her as if she were just part of the falling wall of water. "Rohan?" she whispered, her voice cracking. "Rohan, you're home." He didn't answer. He only stepped across the threshold, bringing with him the cold of the deep forest and a strange, sweet, cloying scent, like old copper and damp, decaying sandalwood. Priya quickly slammed the door shut, locking them away from the monsoon's fury. She guided him inside, her hand touching his arm. It was freezing, a skin-cutting cold, not the cold of the rain, but the bone-deep chill of something that had lain long in the dark earth. She didn't care. Hot tears streamed down her cheeks. He was back. Washaliv. Anu, she said, forcing a smile. Anu is sleeping. She will be so happy. Rohan turned his head. It was a rigid, mechanical movement, like a puppet on a string. He stared at the cradle. He did not blink. "You must be starving," Priya said, her voice shaking. "Let me get you some rice and curry." She hurried to the small kitchen corner, her heart pounding a chaotic mix of profound joy and a vague, nameless dread. She spooned rice onto a plate, her hand trembling so much, she dropped the spoon. The sharp metallic clang echoing on the stone floor. When she turned back, he was standing in the same spot, but the silver gungru bell had been removed. He was holding it in his palm, his thumb stroking it, vacant and mechanical. "Rohan?" she said softly, placing the plate on the wooden table. "Eat." He stared at the plate. Then he slowly looked up at her. He shook his head. Slowly. He had not uttered a single word since his return. That night, she lay beside him on the floor mat. She couldn't sleep. His breathing was too quiet. His chest barely rose and fell. And that smell? Old copper and rot. It grew thicker in the suffocating air. She heard Anu stir in the cradle. Instantly, Rohan's eyes opened. In the dark, they seemed to catch a faint gleam, reflective, like a cat's. He turned his head toward the cradle and held that pose, unmoving, just staring for hours. The next morning, the news spread like wildfire. Mrs. Chela, the old woman who lived at the end of the path, the one the entire village feared, appeared. She did not come alone. 4 other women followed her silently, one carrying a small platter piled with turmeric powder and fresh myrrh. "We heard Rohan has returned," Mrs. Shala said, her voice sharp as a razor. She stepped into the house without an invitation. Her sharp, black, needle-like eyes swept the room and stopped on Rohan, who was still sitting in the chair, still in yesterday's filthy clothes. He completely ignored their presence. His gaze was still fixed on Anu, who was now toddling on the floor. Mrs. Chala took a deep breath. Her wrinkled face contorted. "What is that smell?" she whispered, horrified. "Priya, what have you brought into your home?" "It's Rohan, my husband," Priya replied, her voice defensive. "Wash lost. He is just very tired." Mrs. Chala stepped closer to Rohan. She held out the platter of a welcome home offering from the temple. Rohan remained perfectly still. Mrs. Chala set the platter on the table, right next to the untouched plate of curry from the night before. The moment the ceramic plate touched the wood, a sound came from Rohan's throat. It was not a word, it was a hiss, a dry, brittle click, sharp and piercing, like an insect's leg breaking. He bared his teeth. His gums were deathly white. Mrs. Chala recoiled, her confidence shattering, replaced by sheer terror. She grabbed the arms of the other women. "Go!" she ordered. "We are leaving. Now." "Mrs. Shula, please wait," Priya begged, following them to the door. "He is just in shock. He needs time." "That is not your husband," Mrs. Chala cut in, her voice now a trembling, terrified whisper. She turned back, her wrinkled face twitching with fear in the gray light. "There are stories here. Of things that wander in the rain, things that lose their own shape. Of the Pish, don't be ridiculous," Priya shouted, but her voice cracked. "That is Rohan." Mrs. Chala ignored her. "A hungry spirit has worn his skin. It didn't come back for you. It came back for something new." Her eyes darted toward Anu, who was giggling and clapping her hands, oblivious. Mrs. Chala spat onto the damp earth. "Keep it in your house, Priya. Don't ever let it out." They left quickly, almost running, disappearing into the relentless rain. The next morning, Priya found a circle of coarse salt and dried marigold petals sprinkled across her threshold. It was not a blessing. It was a ward. A barrier. The entire village had now sealed her in. The next 3 days passed in a delirious nightmare. The rain never stopped. Rohan did not eat. He did not drink. He did not sleep. He just sat and watched his daughter. Occasionally, that dry, brittle click would sound from his throat. Priya tried to talk to him, to sing him their old songs, to tell him about Anu's first steps. He would only tilt his head, as if listening to some distant frequency she could not hear. He began to change. The dried mud flaked off him in patches, revealing the skin beneath. It was pale, strangely taut, and seemed too large for his skeletal frame. And the smell of old copper grew overpowering, so thick it made Priya gag. On the 4th night, the neighbor's dog, the one that always barked when she passed, suddenly fell silent. Priya heard a short, choked-off yelp, then nothing. She looked at Rohan. He was standing by the window, staring out into the rain. A dark, viscous trail of mud dripped from his chin onto the floor. "Were you outside?" Priya asked, her voice barely audible. He turned, the vacant eyes. He smiled. It was not Rohan's smile. It was too wide, stretching unnaturally toward his ears. "No?" a voice whispered, dry as rustling leaves. It was the first time he had spoken, but it was not Rohan's voice. On the 5th day, a sadhu, a holy ascetic, was passing through the village. He was draped in a tattered saffron-colored cloth, his long, matted hair soaked from the rain. He stopped at Priya's house, perhaps to ask for water. Rohan was sitting on the veranda, still as a statue, letting the rain lash him. The sadhu saw him. The holy man froze instantly. His eyes widened, filled with a pure, naked terror. His bronze begging bowl fell from his hand, clanging loudly on the whetstone. He didn't bother to pick it up. He turned and fled. He ran for his life, slipping in the mud, vanishing down the trail. The fear in Priya's stomach solidified into a heavy block of ice. It was true. The villagers were right. Mrs. Chawla was right. This thing sitting on her veranda, was not her husband. She had to get Anu out. She had to run. But where? The rain had turned the only path out of the village into a churning river of mud. The small bridge had been washed away 2 days ago. They were trapped. Trapped with it. That night, she decided she would confront it. Once Anu was fast asleep, she lit an oil lamp, its small flame casting, frantic, dancing shadows on the walls. Rohan sat in the corner, almost invisible in the gloom. "Who are you?" Priya demanded, her voice stronger than she felt. The shadow in the corner tilted its head. "You know who I am, Priya," the dry voice returned. "He was so cold when I found him. Broken, under a large rock. The water had taken him." "Shut up," Priya hissed. "I was alone for so long," the shadow whispered. "Cold, hungry. I wore his memories. I followed your scent. But this body..." It held up a hand in the lamplight. The skin was thin as paper, peeling away at the knuckles. "It's failing. It's been dead too long. I need something new, something clean." "No," Priya gasped, backing away toward the cradle. "It's so small," it said, and this time, it stood. It was taller than Rohan. Much taller. Its joints popped and cracked as it straightened. "But it's perfect. It will last so much longer." "I won't let you!" Priya screamed, grabbing the kitchen knife from the table. The storm outside seemed to answer her fury. A deafening crack of thunder shook the small house. The flame on the oil lamp sputtered and died, plunging the room into thick, absolute darkness. There was only the howl of the rain, the steady breathing of Anu, and another sound, the dry, brittle, click, 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 incessant, from the other side of the room. Priya scrambled to the cradle, snatching up her sleeping daughter. The baby, startled, began to wail in terror. "She, my love, she," Priya sobbed. A vicious streak of lightning tore the sky, illuminating the room for one brief second. It was no longer in the corner. It was right in front of her. "Give it to me." Priya screamed and spun around, clutching Anu, running for the bedroom. She slammed the door shut, bracing it with her entire body. The scratching began immediately, the sound of wood splintering. "Priya." The voice was right at the crack of the door, a venomous whisper. "You can't keep it forever. It's mine, just like he was mine." "Get away!" she shrieked. "Get away, you monster!" The scratching stopped. A sudden, unholy silence fell, broken only by the rain. Priya held her breath. The baby in her arms, sensing the terror, also fell silent, her small face pressed into Priya's shoulder. This false quiet was infinitely worse. Slam! An immense force struck the door, making the iron hinges scream in protest. Slam! The wood began to split, long cracks spiderwebbing out. Priya looked around the room in desperation. She saw her old teak wedding chest, the one where she kept her most precious saris. Sarantoit placed the trembling Anu inside, nesting her between the soft layers of silk. "Be silent, Anu," she commanded, her voice cold and hard. "No matter what happens, do not make a sound." She closed the lid. Slam! The bedroom door flew open, smashing against the wall. The silhouette filled the doorway. It was too tall, its head nearly scraping the rafters. It was no longer pretending to be Rohan. In the strobing lightning, Priya could see its limbs bending at unnatural angles. It stepped into the room. The clicking was loud now, declarative. It sniffed the air. "I smell it," it hissed. "I smell the new life, the clean life." It turned its head toward the tick chest. "No!" Priya screamed. She remembered. The small dagger, the ceremonial kirpan that Rohan's father had given him, was still hanging on the wall. Say, the cold metal, a shock in her sweaty palm. She charged, raising the dagger high. "Stay away from her." The creature turned. It didn't try to dodge. It just stood. Another flash of lightning, brutal and bright, tore the sky, illuminating the entire room as if it were day. Priya froze, the dagger held uselessly in the air, the creature standing before her. The thing staring at her with cold, vacant eyes, the thing smiling that impossibly wide, ear-to-ear smile. It wasn't Rohan. It was her, a perfect copy of Priya. Matted hair, pale, taut, unnatural skin, eyes void of all life. And on its chin, a dripping trail of black, copper-smelling mud. The Priya copy tilted its head. It laughed, a dry, brittle click, click, click from its throat. He never came back, my love, it whispered, in her own voice, but ancient and dry. He died under that rock. Cold, broken, the dagger fell from Priya's hand, clattering uselessly on the floor. She looked down at her own hands. They were caked in the same black viscous mud. She raised them to her face, the smell of copper. It was coming from her. No, she choked out. No, it can't be. You went looking for him. The monster Priya smiled, its smile a perfect, horrifying mirror of her own. You went too deep into the forest. You cried. You collapsed in the cold mud. You were so hungry, so empty. Priya stumbled back, hitting the cold wall. She looked around. The house. The smell of mildew, the untouched plate of rice. The silenced dog, the terrified Sadhu, Mrs. Sheila with her salt and wards, all of it. They weren't fleeing Rohan, they were fleeing her. She was the one who had returned, cold, empty. What have I done? The real Priya whimpered, staring at her own horrific reflection. I came home, the creature said. I was patient, but this shell, it pointed at the real Priya. It's falling apart. The grief is making it weak. I need something new, something pure, something untouched by pain. Both of them turned. From inside the tick chest, a tiny, terrified whimper. Priya, the monster, smiled, a look of satisfied hunger. Priya, the human, tried to scream. But no sound came. The creature stepped past her, its joints cracking and popping with grotesque satisfaction. It no longer needed to whisper. It's all right, my sweet Anu, it said, in Priya's own gentle, familiar voice, the voice the child had heard every day of her young life. It placed its hand, caked in black mud, on the lid of the chest. Mummy's here. Thanks for watching until the end. What was your favorite part? Please let me know in the comments below. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to leave a like, share it, and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss my future content. Your support is my biggest motivation. Thank you all so much.